Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to the Growth Mastermind Group. Growth Mastermind Group is a group of entrepreneurs whose mission, vision, and purpose is to help you, yes, you, the entrepreneur, find, unleash, and fulfill your potential. We meet here on Clubhouse and YouTube live Friday mornings at 8:35 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. With that, don't forget to follow us on Clubhouse, YouTube, and I'll turn it over to our fearless leader, Peter, on emotional intelligence.
How this is actually affecting our way of doing the things, how this is affecting the way that we are building up on emotional intelligence. But even more important, it is like to understand how this emotional intelligence it is crucial for raising the kids and from a young age to actually building up on them. And to keep this in your mind that kids are not judgmental. They don't have that type of things that we do, to be judgmental based on emotion because they only do whatever they feel like to the moment and they see at the moment. So uh, building on them, the emotional intelligence from the beginning, it's a very important part that we should focus our lives, especially for the new generation, so we can raise a future generation that's going to be actually more emotionally intelligent and more successful and more a better human being, to say like that. And I like one of the saying during the books was that the author was kind of I would say underlining is that we are evolved monkeys. And I know it sounds very tough for a lot of people to hear this, but that's what we are. And yes, we get better with time, but our emotional intelligence was not kind of developed like it's supposed to be from the beginning. And while we get more intelligent, more, I would say, more attentive with different things, and we became more educated, still our emotional intelligence level remain to the level of that monkey, to say like that, because, well, we can see around us what is happening. Like we're still on the fight and fight. There's still war going on. There's still, I would say, triggers in our day-to-day relationships that if somebody press the wrong button, you're gonna just bust in, like trying to fight them, or and that shows that our emotional intelligence is low. We're supposed to be able to I will say withhold our emotions and use this empathy, to be able to understand why we are to that stage, how this thing happened. and how we can control it to be able to be more efficient in, with our daily life and whatever decision we're going to take. And, at the end of the day, emotional intelligence helps on increasing the interpersonal relationship, which is very crucial for the business, for our lives, for everything we do. And not having this, I would say, trimmed down and understood to that level that you can actually have the ability of identify your own emotions, and others, to self-motivate ourselves, to know, to monitor our emotions and or those people that are around us, and to understand how their emotions, what happened with them before we're gonna take any conclusion. It is absolute a need that needs to be nurtured, needs to be understood, and needs to be driven in the right direction. So this is kind of like what I want, to kind of to set up as a startup for our conversation today, that how important it is in this emotion, and how I will say kind of not understood from the beginning, and how we can change this thing, by doing step by step. But before moving on, Miss Tabitha, I want to hear your opinion if you have anything that maybe you observe on yourself, or you have anything that you feel like, inside of your office, could use some improvement, and how this thing can help on it.
I think in today's world, we lack, I don't know if it's even emotional intelligence, but in this day and age of communication, we don't even know how to communicate effectively. So I'm just listening and learning.
Absolutely. And please, if you feel like, if there's any unclarity in what I'm saying, or if you feel like there's anything to add on, please add on. Remember, this is a conversation, and we want to keep it like that. So it's not the monologue, it's not going to be like that. And the only thing I want to say, regarding the, I will say, communication side, that we, even if, yes, emotional intelligence can be somehow the trigger of lack of communication, but communication is something that we're lacking, maybe because of childhood, our way that we've been raised. And we heard this thing a lot about the fact that the parents, when you're small, they're telling you, like, don't talk to stranger, don't do that, be quiet. And to a certain point, these things are getting embedded in our brain, and I will say, like, having this luggage that we are carrying with us for so long time, it is something that, it can affect the way that we are communicating later on, the way we are communicating with each other, the way we build relationship. So it's so important for us to understand that our past could be affecting our way of interacting with people, but does not mean that the fact that our past hold us not to be communicative, not to be open-minded, not to be
I'm just saying things like, when I was young, let's give an example. If we went to a restaurant to eat, our parents didn't order our dinner for us. If we wanted to eat, we needed to speak to the person taking the order and tell that individual we wanted. Today, we don't even have to do that. We go on our phones, get everything for people, just stuff like that. We lack just normal communication. And I think that has affected the lack of emotional intelligence that people have. Because, for instance, when I was younger and the waitress was speaking to me, I had to communicate back. She came back and said, "We are all out of hot cocoa. What would you like instead?" Then I had to use my own process to make a decision. In today's world, kids don't have to do any critical thinking. They don't even know how to think about how to solve a problem. And I know I'm talking about a very minimal problem. I want hot cocoa, they don't have it. That's minimal. But if we can't teach our children to respond to something that simple without a temper tantrum or whatever you want to call it, I wanted hot cocoa. But, and then they push their stuff away from them because they just didn't get what they want. This is all creating their emotional intelligence from when they're a young child. And then we get older and we have grown adults that can't have a communication. 2, can't do any critical thinking without, causing unnecessary drama. So this is all part of the emotional intelligence. I haven't studied it. I didn't read the book about it. But I think we also have to teach our children that it's okay, and maybe even more teach ourselves first, that it's okay to have an emotion. It's okay if I'm angry about something, how I deal with it, not just as I was a child. It didn't matter if I was angry about something because how I felt didn't really matter growing up. So we learn to push it down, push it down, push it down, ignore it. Then you get into a marriage and you do what you did your whole childhood because you were taught that, and you don't have a healthy marriage. So that's the process. And I think all of that begins with communication.
No, I think it's so important, and you're right. Since we are young, like we've been kind of let ourselves in our minds to kind of develop that tantrum, and I think, at the end of the day, like us not being able to kind of focus on developing a better way of understanding, and like you use your, like your basic understanding, the critical thinking, and to actually help on taking decision or understanding, I'll say, the differences between what is offered to us and what is not available, and how these things that is not available, like can be replaced, and all this. And this is just the example that we give, but there's so many other situations where we have to have that understanding of that critical thinking, like you said, and uh, understand that like we do have to take a decision in the most rational way without to put any, like I would say, emotions, and just to be like, okay, is this something I can change? Is this something I can do? And if not, how this thing is going to affect us. So, absolutely agree with that. And um, we are like, like I'll say, animals with intelligence that still needs to kind of learn how to understand our emotions, our way of behaving in the society. Because even if like it's enough, I'll say, to for your behavior to be seen by your kids, not even going outside, and you're gonna raise another generation maybe of people that they're not gonna be able to sustain themselves, to be able to like control their emotions, to be able to do better. So it's so important for us to be able to control it. And I apologize if you hear a lot of noise. Well, it's cutting the grass. So most everything. But yeah, it's fine. Um, so yes, I think it's so important for us to have those uh, those aspects of it. I'm trying to post it also.
And we have to teach our children that emotions are normal and it is okay to have them and feel them. And we need to help them process the emotions that they're feeling instead of just reacting. We
No,
live in a world where everybody reacts quickly
yeah,
without
and
the process of, oh, let me take a minute and think about this.
that's exactly what emotional intelligence come in place. Because first of all, the first step you have to do is understanding your emotions, then using your emotions, then managing your emotions, and then use the perception of your emotion to be able to take out the conclusion that you're going to be able to communicate. And people, they fail on that. Most of the time, that's where they fail, because they're not trying to rationalize what's happening. They are not on that stage where the self-awareness, the self-regulation, and they use this ability of because there are different fields. It's like the self-awareness, the self-regulation is the social skills, the empathy, and the motivation. These are like the 5 elements that is part of the emotional intelligence. But the first one, the first self-regulation, self-awareness, is the one that is helping us to communicate better. Because we're gonna be like rationalize the information we brought, rationalize our own feelings, understanding where we are to that moment when somebody's giving us the information, and how this thing is going to be affecting us later on, to say that. And it's crucial, I would say, and it's so important and so mandatory, to say like that, of us understanding where we need to be as emotional scaling in the moment we receive information, in the moment we're going to kind of analyze it and take the decision about what is going to be our reply. And understanding these are crucial not only for us as humans, but also for our business and the way we interact with other human beings. And like just kind of to understand, like when we call it low emotional intelligence, is like people that are not accepting to self or to ours, not accepting it, yeah? That they're using passive or aggressive communication, lack of empathy. Those are like signs that we have to be aware of. And the high emotional intelligence, self and others, can communicate assertively and displays empathy. Yeah, those are people who have higher emotional intelligence. And you see them, with of higher self-control. They don't like explode, and they're like literally like able to hold themselves accountable for their own emotions and understanding. Maybe sometimes, and it was a great example in the book that sometimes when we are like explosive in our behavior is maybe because we're hungry. Understanding that you're hungry, it makes you to understand that your behavior is something that you have to control to the point of understanding how you have to kind of withhold it and control your anger or your emotions, negative emotions, just because you have a bad feeling or like your body needs food. It doesn't mean that you're going to take that thing on others. And he gives another example that I thought is very great, that sometimes like when we are sad, yes, we're extremely emotional. When something is said in us, our way of perceiving the things is more easy to be irritated. And us allowing this thing, just because we are sad, to take that irritation that can convert in anger and that can convert in, I would say, unwanted conversations, it's crucial for us to understand how this thing can be affecting and to analyze it and see right away and convert it in the right direction. And I will say that the way that I perceive this emotional intelligence from the point of view of our mind, our way of understanding, is that anything that comes around us, among us, or to us, and we receive as information, we have to understand our stage where we are, so our self-awareness about the knowing your internal state, preference, resources, intuitions include emotional awareness, accurate assessments, our strength with limits, and the self-confidence, that we have in that moment. And understanding those one, to be able to kind of understand where we are to that moment and how this can affect the way that we're going to reply to somebody's maybe a simple question is crucial. It's crucial to understand our stage to the current moment of our conversation. And then taking to the next step and doing that self-regulation or managing our internal states, impulses, resources, include self-control, disrupting impulses, consciousness, adaptability to change, comfort with ideas and approaches. Because in the moment you are aware that you're not in the right stage, yes, now you know that you have to control it. You have to understand that you have to create that self-regulation of saying, okay, I'm hungry and I feel annoyed right now because that fact, but anything comes along, I have to control it because it's nobody else's fault that I'm hungry. I'm responsible to make sure I'm going to feed myself. So this feeling is going to go away and I can have more rational conversation. But I cannot take on people just because of my inner feeling or, like the internal states, that I'm on. And I have to apply that self-control and show empathy So that having that awareness, that feeling expression, needs of concern include, understanding others, understand developing our anticipating meetings, reading a group emotion, and current state, like all those one have to be separate from my current stage. And I have to use that self-control, that self-control of controlling my emotion, separate what I being just present there and understand others how they react. Perhaps they're also hungry and that's the reason they react maybe the way they react. But me being already like angry and not using that self-control and just jumping to the conclusion, well, it's just gonna create literally like what we see all the time. A lot of conflicts, a lot of yelling at each other, getting that irritational stage of our minds that we're like ready to fight anybody that is in our way because they offend us and we feel offended, and now on top of our hunger, we are having all these ideas in our minds, and people are still feeding because they're also hungry, but they cannot recognize their own emotions. And we are literally building up to get this gas on fire constantly because of our inability of self-control and bring that consciousness, like ability to change and understand our current stage and be able to uh, control our emotions to the stage where you're going to be able to minimize any friction, your words, your conversation, in your dialogues with others, and understand how others they can feel on the same token. And then the other thing that I think is very important is the motivation. And when we talk about motivation, we talk about that way of us being to be like moving towards our goals, achievement, or everything that we have in front of us, and the way we're gonna drive or initiative or that optimism that we have to have in us. Those are all motivation that can help us to move on. And you can, using the same example, we're gonna be like, hey, my goal is to have a nice time or great time with this group, yeah. And yes, I'm hungry, I'm irritated, but that's just an obstacle, yeah. And that's gonna pass soon because dinner is gonna be in an hour or whatever it is. And you are like literally switching that sensation in the purpose of having a good time. And you need and must focus on that idea that your purpose there, whatever it is, maybe it's a business meeting. Yeah, you're going to a 10x conference. You don't want to go there and just, look like a very irritated person. Instead, would be like a very, say, easy approachable and very nice person to be in presence of. So converting that emotions in understanding your motivation, the reason that you're there, and focusing on that one instead to focus on those angry feelings that you have inside of you, and using that self-control and pushing up that empathy towards others, and using lastly your social skills, which is adaptance to introduce desirable responses to other, including ability to influence clear communication, which we talked earlier, yes, conflict of manager, leadership, building bonds, collaboration, cooperation, aggregate to create a group synergy, which is crucial for social skills to be present. And all this can help us on building up something better, building something more easy, building up something that is meaningful and absolutely desirable for us to have as humans, and of course as business people, your employers, or whatever it is that where you are right now when you're listening to this, understanding your your stage where you are, understanding your surrounding, understanding the why those feelings are inside of you, and using that self-control, getting those motivations, putting that empathy and externalize it in a way that you can create that amazing collaboration and collaboration, creating that amazing synergy inside of the group that you are part of, or inside of that community or household or family, is crucial for our way of becoming more pleasant for others and having a better communication, having a better success in whatever we do because of the way we are behaving and interacting with people and other members of the society or family surrounding us. So yeah, these are I think the crucial elements that I found that as absolutely must to have. And I would say that, like from what I see and the way I feel, it is that we are so caught in our day-by-day basis that we're losing this ability of having that self moment, that we are internalize our own feelings and understanding where we are. So in that way we can, I kind of visualize this as an input and output. When you have those old VCRs or anything that you have in your mind, when you have an input and output. So the input can be anything, but the most important part it is in the moment it's received as an input, what is happening inside there, the way that's going to be out for the output is the one that's going to change the way we're gonna be as a society. The input can be like a violent input because that person maybe never learned about emotional intelligence, and you are taking that process and realizing maybe the person is hungry or it doesn't feel good, yeah. And I was listening to this amazing example. It was two girls, two girls, and the 5 years old having this tantrum, emotions, and everything else. And she's like frustrating, trailing, screaming, crying, and everything that you want to see in a kid that has this, syndromes, episodes, And right before the mom was trying to interact, 10 years old took the 5 years old and said to her, I would like to find more why you're like that. And the mom stopped for a second and allowed them. And good enough, they went together in the room and she was listening to the conversation. And they were literally like, talking. And she's like, why are you feeling like that? What happened? I would like to hear more. And the girl starting to express herself, like her feelings, or what happens, how she's feeling, betrayed, and the girl is like, I would like to learn more. I would like to learn more. And good enough, a few minutes passes, and that crying and all the things is coming down. And at a certain point, she hears jiggling, and laughs. So this shows that if you don't have judgmental, especially your kid, you're 10 years old, your judgmental is very low. And you just ask the right question and you put that thing to make sure that the person that she's coming to with that tantrum, with that episode, she can express herself, express themselves towards you, and you're going to receive this one with calmness. You can solve a conflict. And also shows that kids can have the highest emotional intelligence if we nurture it. But what we're doing, we're allowing our own emotional intelligence to interact with their emotions, with their basic rule of taking what they see instead to judge it in the wrong way. And basically create these, I'll say, little monsters using another definition that was inside of one of the things that I was reading, creating mini monsters, that they were being like, literally like taking all our kindness, converting something that is desirable because they saw it on us that, we cannot control it. And they saw it on us that we're not able to talk nicely with them when we're angry. And now they take it and they do the same that we teach them. And not only that one, they do it with that cute face and I will say very unique, I will say, approach that they have, and just give us that weird, I would say, like situation where we have a kid that give us the same token we give it to them earlier, but in the most bizarre way that we cannot even be mad at it. Even we should be mad at it because they know how to do it better than us. So, but yes, those are like a few elements that I thought, it should be great to be known and everything, but I don't want to take this over like Tabitha, what I would say, what episodes or what things that you encountered that you felt this, I would say, stages or what do you think that is stopping most of the people on getting on that better stage of being a better human being, to say like that, and not to get to explode?
First of all, maybe we should say we're not medical doctors or any of that. We're not giving you advice on how to do that, just to protect ourselves because we have those individuals out there. However, I was thinking to myself, man, if I had the answer to this, I would be a billionaire. I want to be a billionaire. So
Yes,
bad.
100%. I mean, it is absolutely heavy. It's absolutely not easy to do it. But I think every single one of us been to that stage where we're like, somebody push a button, the wrong button. We go to that rubbish, just like on them. And then we're like realizing that it was not even their fault. Maybe it was ours. But it's too late now. Just
Exactly.
because we're not be able to figure out that one.
I just
So
think that we don't even necessarily learn how to process emotions. I asked Kenzie, thanks for being on Clubhouse with us, Kenzie, and always supporting us. And she said she does agree that a lot of people don't know how to communicate and they're not forced to learn because they are in an environment maybe where they never had to. So now we're grown adults and we don't want to learn new things. As an adult with a family member who has PTSD and has some emotional challenges, at first I expected this individual to learn how to deal with her own emotions. What I learned was I also had some things I needed to learn. in order to help the individual. And I think we live in a world where we're always pointing fingers saying, you need to learn how to do this. Instead of, there's that old saying that says, be careful when you're pointing fingers because there's several pointing back at you as you're pointing. So I think one of the things as human beings that we could do is ourselves learn, take it upon ourselves to better and I'm not saying that we have to not challenge somebody. But when we do this, there is a way that we can learn how to approach every situation with tenacity and integrity and character. Because if you are offended by something and your initial reaction is to start calling them names and belittling them, that shows a whole lot more about you than about what they're saying. We need to take the time instead of jumping to a conclusion. And this is that what I was saying, we have a tendency to react. And when we use the word react, it's I quickly have to respond to that. And we don't have to. Who says we can't learn to say, let me ponder on that for a moment. My grandmother used to use that word. And my grandfather, very wise man, and he always used to say that it's okay to take a minute to ponder on things, because then we're not so quick to react. Because when we quickly react, many times it's the wrong reaction. And then what happens in today's world is we're not so quickly to accept responsibility, saying, I reacted really poorly, and kind of go from there. So there's no personal responsibility. So if we learn these things, and again, I was at a wedding last weekend. No, not last weekend. Last weekend, I saw Mackenzie. It was a blessing. She came back to Michigan to visit us. But the weekend prior to that, yeah, I was in or my husband and I went to a wedding. And one of the new moms said something like, I'm not going to tell my child to be quiet in a restaurant. If he wants to run around, that's what kids do. And I had a response, but I just bit my tongue because I don't know the whole circumstances. And I'm not going to tell her she's wrong, because again, the quick reaction was, I hate going to a restaurant when I'm trying to enjoy a nice dinner and there is I can't think of the word I'm looking for.
Stephanie Arms.
There is a wild child that is,
Lose.
I dislike that. No, but I'm not the child's parent. Kenzie says that's being a terrorist. Do I expect them to be perfect? No. I take my granddaughters to the restaurant. And they know they're not running around the restaurant because that's not what we do in restaurants. My granddaughter, you've met her, she'll talk to anyone. She's turning around and she's talking to the people in the table next to us, telling them she hopes they enjoy their dinner and are having an amazing day. That's totally different than throwing food and someone saying, well, it's the waitress's job to clean up the food. That's what she gets paid to do. No, really, she doesn't.
Yep.
Right? But so it's this. But I could have reacted and said, that's why I don't like to go to restaurants. But again, how effective would that have been for that mom? So I don't know if that mom's situation and she goes to the restaurant because she's so completely exhausted, doesn't have the energy to do dinner at home. So this is her only option. And maybe she needs, we don't know. But again, it's the situation of that quick reaction. Kenzie, you're a young mom. You have a lot of individuals that are your age who don't believe in training up a child, that the child should be able to scream at the grocery store if they are upset because they're just expressing themselves. I'd love to know what you think about that as a young mom.
And until Mackenzie, she's gonna give us an answer. I was just trying to say that, like there are so many backgrounds that we have, every single person in this world, every single one of them has, different, I would say, I see it as a, how you have a long string, so it starts with generation and you have all the strings, like until your generation. So you have this thing strings for years, but like you have this, everybody has different thoughts, different things. And I feel like, like somehow the way we are behaving today is because somewhere in the string, somebody did something that affect the next generation, next generation, next generation. And we are carrying along with these laggages. But still, we can be responsible and be the generation that will sacrifice and break the string and rebuild a new one that will be more things. Because I'm pretty sure that that lady in the restaurant, her mom did the same, her grandmother did the same, and everybody in the family was agreeing with her that that's the right way. So now you build up this thing, and guess what? That kid that is yelling today, tomorrow is going to be a father, and he's going to be in the restaurant allowing his kids because, well, that's what my mom did. And this string has to be somehow, I don't know, tempered, like build up on a different way.
Well, what she said is she was raised in a home where they weren't allowed to express themselves. So she's doing the
Opposite way, yeah.
The extreme.
Yeah.
And there's got to be
But
some.
that's also like one of the way that, like depends what happens in that on that streamline, like it's also like an event. And, like I know that they're like this generation that, they don't want to touch the kid, because, I mean, I've been seeing a lot of straightener on my skin. But I know that there's a lot of around the new generation, they don't touching the kids, and they're like raising and prove that yes, we raise the kids, we know without any violence, to say like that. However, we also raise a generation like Gen X that they are shameless. They are not, they don't give you respect.
Kenzie.
And while yes, we're not promoting your violence or anything like that, but I remember that in our days, if you're talking bad with your parents, you are doomed. You're like, you know that that's not gonna happen. Look, we are still more respectful people than the new generation, that they're like careless about this. So then you raise the question, yeah, which method is better?
Yeah, Kenzie added that she used to believe in spanking, and Kenzie was raised in a Bible-based home, say it that way. And the scripture says, don't spare the rod. Spare the rod, spoil the child, right? So she said she used to believe in spanking, but now she's really more on board with the gentle parenting, obviously. Kids need correction, she says, and they need to be held accountable for their actions. They are learning. They can't just run wild and think that mom is okay with disorder, which is without the rules and that. So that was Kenzie's take on this.
Yeah.
Gentle parenting is this kind of new age parenting where they don't necessarily believe in spanking. If you spank them, then they think hitting is okay.
And while I agree with this, and I'm telling one thing, I know for a fact that even if you don't spank them, they still can hit because they see in others. It's enough to see once and they become a hater to say that because they're going to find that. And that's also the influence of others. And that's one aspect. The second aspect, I think it is like important. Spank definitely is not definitely not the solution. But I think one of the things that it's kind of, I would say, important, that from the previous generation, one thing that was asking for the respect, demanding respect, and this thing in the new generation, I don't see it. And comparing that new way of parenting with the old way of parenting, I think there's no right or wrong, on neither there, in the meaning that yes, it was not something that was good, but that was the best for that time. And we also have to put the time matter, because like, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, if you were spanking your kid, it was okay and everybody was encouraging to do that because that was the norm. Now it's not. But the question is what we can bring from that generation that we can apply to still gain the respect, still have that thing. What else has to be done for you to earn your respect of the kid without to spank them or even like raising the voice,
Well, back then they demanded respect. They didn't earn it.
Yeah.
So it's just what happened. You were supposed to respect your elders. You were supposed to, whatever they said was okay. And you're right. There is some, because I'm not always right,
Mm-hmm.
and it's completely appropriate, if done in a respectful manner, for my children to say, Mom, and whatever it may be. And we can have, what I love now is we can actually have a real conversation about these things. And guess what? Sometimes we're still going to disagree. So my granddaughter got a little paddle on the butt from her grandfather the other day because she was being totally naughty, throwing her toys at her sister because she was mad, banging things on the floor. And my husband gave her just a little tap on her butt. And I'm telling you, her whole demeanor changed. It was like, oh, Papa said to stop. And he asked her to stop several times. She didn't cry. She didn't have marks on her, anything of that nature. It was just let me get your attention, because words weren't working. And my daughter is a gentle parenting.
Yeah.
So
She had a new element in her life. It was a new element introduced to her life.
you should have seen her look at her papa like, did you?
Yeah, confusing.
It was, Kenzie
Yes.
said, why would I silence a child that doesn't understand his own feelings? I'm not going to tell you to stop crying. Just get over it. Children need to regulate their emotions, learn how to process them. That doesn't come from spanking it out of them. But I'm also not against spanking parents. Exactly. She means the people who choose that method. Funny you should say that, Mackenzie. I was telling Al last night, I was in the Meijer, and there was this young dad in there. If I had to guess, he was about maybe late 20s, early 30s. He had 2 kids in the grocery cart, probably 2 and 4, about my grandkids' age. And the boy was just crying. Just crying. I don't know what he was crying about, but I heard Dad. I was filling my water jugs, and I heard Dad say to stop crying. Stop crying, he said at least 3 times. And then he said, he cussed at the little boy, and I just thought to myself, I don't know why the kid is crying. Is he crying because Dad said no, he couldn't have something? That's what happens to my granddaughter. When I tell her no, she can't have something, she wants to throw a temper tantrum. And I get down to her level, and I have a conversation with her about how you don't get something every time you come to the store. And you can be upset because you didn't get a toy or whatever it may be. However, how we express our upset by throwing ourselves on the floor and throwing a temper tantrum isn't how we express that we're upset. And she's going to be 5 here in a couple weeks. Again, this is a conversation that we've had several times, and I think we'll have to, because I don't ever want her to think, and this is what happens, I don't ever want her to think she can't come tell me, because that's how all of these people get away with hurting children, because the children are afraid to speak. They're afraid to say, this person hurt me, or that this person makes me feel uncomfortable. And we have to teach our children that it's okay, that how you're feeling matters. And Kenzie says, exactly.
Yeah. And I think, like for instance, with my kid, and I'm giving an example because it's very easy to chew on this. Every single time he has one of those episodes, I'm asking, is this the way that we're supposed to behave? And he already explained to me good behavior and bad behavior. Yeah. Do you think you behave good now? He's like, no. So do you think if this is the way we're supposed to behave bad, would you like me to behave in the same way like you? Do you think it's going to help me to see you doing the same thing? No. So why are we doing this? Does it help you? No. So if it doesn't help you, why are you doing it? You don't like yourself? And I ask, I'm asking literally, like I'm interrogating him. And the other day, a funny thing was that that happened the other day, it was that Cardone has this 10x for kids. So he sent 3 videos. So I start to put the 3 videos that he sent to him like last week. And he was listening to those videos. And when I asked him, like the other day, it's like, because he had a project to do a bottle. So he was like messing everything up. I'm like, do you think this is going to help your project? No. So don't you think that it's supposed to be a better job because this is your project? And his answer was, I agree. I'm like, okay. So what do you think you should do? You should do maybe work better, more harder, more efficient. And he said again, I agree. And I start to realize that he actually listening to that video when one of the videos is like, always agree. And the next thing that he did with me, he was like, he said, I agree, but I would like you to show me how to do it. So he sold it to me. And I start to realize this thing that it's kind of a weird way that the kids, even if they're silent, they're watching us. Even if they don't see nothing, they listen. Even if you see them playing with the toys, they're there. So the fact that somebody has a tantrum or anything like that, it does not mean that they're not listening to you. It just may be your words that it comes out from your mouth. It does not impress them.
But it also, one of the things we're dealing with too is they get a reward for everything.
Yeah.
They get a reward for nothing. And so again, it's this whole idea of we have to teach them. And listen, it doesn't happen overnight either. It's a process. Like Kenzie said, a child doesn't understand their own feelings.
Yeah.
We're helping them process the feeling.
Yeah.
Instead of, we're supposed to compress the feelings or, push them down and that they don't matter. And we can't have that environment. So, because what happened with my granddaughter, I would say something like, do you think throwing a temper tantrum in the store because you didn't get that toy that you wanted is going to help you get the toy?
Yep.
And she looks at me like, do you think if you behave poorly, you're going to be rewarded with, but guess what happens? Parents say, I did it to shut them up. I can't even tell you how many times I've heard that. I know they don't need McDonald's, but I did it to shut them up. Or I know they didn't need another video game, but I did it to shut them up. Instead of doing the hard stuff. We live in a world where people, I don't know if lazy is the right word, but lazy, lack of energy, maybe lack of know-how. I don't know how to. So we take the easy route. So,
And I think what I observe also, like, and this is going to be very related with the topic today, which is, the emotional intelligence, is that we are not trying to understand our own emotions when this thing happens. And it could be because triggered from the past. Like, for instance, your parents, they were yelling at you, yeah? And now you hear a kid yelling. You feel like, like you're suppressed with that, something in your mind is triggering the fact that somebody's yelling. So now when you were young, in your mind, it was like, please shut up, but you didn't say it because, they were your parents, and otherwise you're going to get, something, a spank. So you repressing your feelings. And certainly now you're like 30, 40 years later, you hear these noises. You like, well, they're not anymore my parents. I'm the one in charge, so I can express myself. So now guess what you do? Shut up. Yeah. And then you start to be like, like shutting them up. So instead for them to find out, okay, why? Like I literally like, I'm a big believer that the questions can help any situation to take it somewhere. And number one thing is like, like the other day, the kid broke he's playing violin. So he broke the violin at school. He literally like broke it. But he didn't broke it because of mistakes. Somebody was making him angry at the school. And the teacher didn't allow him to help him because they were singing. So he took it on my line. I'm like, where do you ever saw that thing? Nowhere. So why you took it? Why you did this thing with the violin? Why you destroyed the violin? Because nobody was listening. And I start to be like thinking, like, like he literally like, and I can control stuff in my house or whatever, but I can control what is at school. If you're shut out at school, and they say shut up because of the same reason, or they're influenced by other kids that they tell the same thing because they hear from their parents, and now they're like moving this to the next level. You're thinking about this idea that you're doing your best parenting and you're trying to control your emotions. But what about the society that you're living in?
yeah, I
And
think,
that's the problem. I don't have an answer for it.
yeah, I don't have an answer either, but I think if we do a good job at home, then they learn how to do these things out in the real world, because the only thing we can do is influence them at home through this process. Because if at home, like what I was told growing up, is nobody cares what you think anyways, Tabitha. Nobody cares what you have to say. We lived in a home where we were seen and not heard necessarily. So what happened is you let all that build up and you get so frustrated and then you explode. And then when you explode because you haven't been heard, you've been talking, but you haven't been heard, you can only handle, and then it explodes. So you have to teach our children and learn ourselves. I think I'm still learning, and I'm 51.
It's a very funny thing that I'm about to say, and don't get offended by anybody like that listening to this.
You know, I don't
But
get
it's-
offended that easily.
He says like the women have 300,000 words a day and men have 50,000 words a day. And if they don't accomplish it by the end of the day to talk all the words, at the end of the day, they're frustrated. This was like a psychological statistic. That was one of the books I was reading, that literally we have a certain amount of words every day. And if you're not accomplished by the end of the night, you're frustrated. You're irritated. You need to be like talking with somebody, and you start to be like, like talking by yourself, or have those monologues, because you need to let that out.
Yeah.
There's a cumulus of things, because you just mentioned that, like all these years are passing and now like you feel like you need your voice to be heard. It's because of that.
Yeah.
So all these years, you accumulate 300 multiplied with 365 multiplied with number of years. Well, you have a lot of words to say.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you say that, because one of the things I've learned about myself is I always used to say, I don't sleep well at night because my brain won't shut off, because I have all these thoughts and these things running around in my brain. And what I have to do is I don't always get to verbalize them, but if I at least write them down, I'm expressing them in some way, shape, or form. And actually, I sleep so much better when I do that. So
Yeah.
even though,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily get to verbalize them. So I would suggest for individuals who are thinking they're not heard, I don't have a solution for those who think they're not being seen. I don't, I know people do extreme things to get noticed. I don't know the solution to that. But for me, the whole getting these thoughts out of my mind, so my mind is clear, writing them down. But I don't know, Kenzie, if you have anything else you'd like to add before we wrap, before I leave, because I have to leave at 10.
We're gonna wrap it, yes.
Okay.
But I was trying to say something very important. There's a YouTuber guy that wrote a few books about parenting, and I forgot his name. Brian something. Brian something. I forgot the full name. He's with I think, I don't know if it's his partner or wife or something. They have all this thing for kids, how to train kids. And one of the things he's mentioning, and was like a very big, I would say, weapon, or was very big weapon for me, was that when a kid wants something and he doesn't receive it, and he finds out that he's crying because he cannot express himself otherwise, and they get your attention, he's going to use that as a weapon every single time, because that's his way of getting his attention. So those tantrum syndromes, everything that you have, those things are building up during the years, because he learned that that's the way he's going to get your attention. Now imagine this, one freaking habit, it takes 90 days to establish it as a habit. Now you're doing this for 7 years as a kid, and maybe even more than that. You're 10 years, 15 years, and you do this. Obviously, that inside of your adulthood, you're gonna use these things. This thing is gonna be your tantrum. You're gonna be having this episode, unleash, and trying to make sure you're gonna get heard and start to yell at people, because, well, when you were young, that's your way you were getting heard, and now you're adult, and now you're like realizing that, well, this is the way that people, they hear you if I scream, if I make myself loud. And I think what we see in the society is like those kind of feedbacks from our childhood a lot, in the way we communicate and everything that's around us. It's like you cannot kind of read through everything that's currently on the market as a humans and the way they behave, or what happened in the last 100 years, to say that as a generation in our families in the 7 years that they've been raised home.
Absolutely.
You cannot say that exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, but we have to change it.
Yeah, my granddaughters are 2 and 4, and I'm always saying, I don't understand that communication. When you're crying and you're not telling me, let's use our words. Why are you crying? What are you upset about? Instead of just not allowing them to speak. So with that, Kenzie didn't have anything else to add. So do you want me to close out the room, or?
Absolutely. We can do that. And I just want
Good
to
morning,
know that.
Craig.
I
And
just
you,
want to announce
of course.
next Friday, it will be that I will try my best to be on, but I will be somewhere in Europe. So I'm not sure where I'm going to be at the time, if I'm going
Sure.
to have internet or whatever it is, but I will do my best to be present. That's the only thing I can promise. So,
So with that said, we want to take the time to thank each and every one of you for being here this morning on our YouTube or Clubhouse. We are the Growth Mastermind Group. We meet here each Friday at 8:30 a.m. with a topic that could, we believe, help you in life and in business. And this Growth Mastermind Group is a group of entrepreneurs that for decades, minimum, have decades of experience in helping you, the entrepreneur, find, unleash, and fulfill your potential. And we thank you for listening and listening to the replay. With that, we ask each and
thank
every
you
one of
very
you to have an
much.
amazing Friday.
Thank you very much, everybody. And feel free to check the link. I put the link of the book that we talked today in the link on the YouTube. And it's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. So if somebody wants to find more about what we talk about and what we think that is needed, feel free to do so. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.